So this morning we have my very good friends, Kevin and Donna, or Devon and Connor, if we get it confused. We're just getting it out there straight away. But Kevin and Donna are like second parents to me, really. So we've been together for a long time. And I'm really psyched that they're sharing. I think that they probably feel a little nervous, but it's all good because they've got a great story to share this morning. So how are you guys? Let's test the mics. Let's see how you are. How are we?
Good. Really good.
Really good.
That's good. Okay, first things first, let's just hear a little bit about you guys. What do you guys do outside of New Heart Church? What's kind of your line of work, Donna?
So outside of New Heart Church, I am a counsellor and therapist for adults and couples.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And Kev?
Outside of work, I'm a driver for Southwest Community Transport.
Beautiful.
Just taking clients to doctors and shopping and outings and all that sort of stuff. Good fun.
Very good. And how long ago did you guys start coming to New Heart? Or church? Because it wasn't New Heart when you guys started coming.
No, that was 2 names ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How long have we been coming? Well, we came in 20 years because we came in the beginning of 2001.
Yeah, wow. 2001. Whew. So I remember dedicating the bus once. Did we do that? After church, up in that top car park, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Because you guys owned your own business for a while. It was gang tours.
Yeah, we had that for 15 years.
Yeah, wow.
And then we had to bring it to an end, but God just led us in other directions, and that's where we are now.
Yeah, awesome. Were you guys, how did you guys start in the church in general, not just New Heart Church? Did you grow up in the church? What was your experience of church growing up?
Well, I grew up as a Catholic and I went to Catholic schools and Catholic church. And that was a weekly event to go to church with either my parents and my brothers, or if I stayed with my great aunt, who I spent a lot of time with.
Yep.
She would take me to church.
Awesome. What about you, Kev?
My church days started really early with at Edelon Baptist Church, with Boys Brigade, Christian Endeavour, youth groups, and right up until the time I moved to Punchbowl. And so it was from the beginning. It was always. I've got a funny story to tell too, quickly. I remember my mum used to be good friends with the minister and that at Edelon Baptist Church.
Yep.
And there was a song that came out, The Real Thing by Russell Morris. Yeah. And this song I thought was the Ants Pants, the Mau 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 sort of thing. And so I got this record, Mum bought it for me, and the minister come over. So I put it on for the minister. Well, I think he was going to do an exorcism on me. He sort of freaked out a bit, eh? But anyway, that's something that I remember.
So how did you view church growing up? Like, what was your viewpoint of church? Was it a positive view? Was it negative? Was it, were you forced to go? Did you like going? What was like kind of church growing up?
I think for me it was a positive because we had church people come over. There was some times that I know were pretty hard at home, but the church was always there, supporting.
Yeah.
Far back as I can remember, there was always support from the church.
Yeah, that's cool. Donna, what about you?
For me, it was a constant because it was weekly. Church it was very different to church for me now, and actually as a kid I found it boring. Yeah, and I mean there wasn't youth group or anything like that, and it was we had to go, and it was, I suppose overall it wasn't very interesting.
Yeah.
But it gave me the fundamentals of my Christian faith, and for that I am very, very grateful and glad that I had that heritage and that origin.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Who would you say in those early stages was the most influential person on your faith?
It definitely would have to be me mum.
Yep.
Yeah, mum, always got us ready for Sunday school and all that sort of thing. And it was very important for mum that we had that background, the growing up of knowing Jesus and God. Yeah, so mum was definitely my main influence.
Absolutely. Donna, what about you? Same question.
For me, it would have been that great aunt that I stayed with.
Yep.
She used to stay up till 2 a.m. praying, and she would often want me to stay up with her. I remember sitting in the dark with Auntie Elsie and her just praying and praying and praying to God and every saint that she knew for every purpose she knew the saints for.
Yep.
And that showed me faith.
Yeah.
Because she had real faith.
Yeah, cool. So that probably seconds the question I'm about to ask, but can you remember anything in those younger stages that really was influential in your life now? Like things that you still apply and you go, wow, that's something that stuck with me.
Well, growing up with a faith cemented that there is something bigger than myself.
Yep.
Even if it seemed distant, because God did seem distant for me back then growing up in that style of faith, for me personally.
Yeah.
Others it might be different. But it was like there was a distance there, but I knew of him.
Yeah, that's cool. Kev, same kind of question. So was there anything very early on that has stuck with you all these years?
I think growing up with the whole Boys Brigade, Sunday school, Christian Endeavour, I had fun with my mates and everything, but I was learning.
Yep.
There was a little part of my brain that was taking stuff in back then.
Yep.
In amongst sort of having fun and all that.
Yep.
So it was, like Donna, it was sort of cemented in. Maybe, in a big way, but like I said, I took little snippets here and there kind of thing, but still it has brought me through to now, and my faith has got stronger and stronger the older I've got.
Yeah, awesome. Were you guys was it always like smooth sailing? You were always part of the church, or was there a season where you guys might not have been attending or not going to church or part of a church community or even, not engaging with God or anything like that?
There was. When we moved from Umina to Punchbowl, and I was with the youth group, and it was a great time. We done some really good things, much like the youth here. But then the time come where we moved to Padstow, so I was I couldn't get over to that youth group. So then I started work, and then that's when I fell away. And I fell away for quite a number of years, and it was hard. Looking back at it, I'm thinking, wow, being on the other side of the fence for a period of time in my life, I just wouldn't want to go back there. I heard it described once, we look on the other side of the fence, there's something better on the other side. But when you get there, all it is thorns and, it's just horrible.
Yep.
I just found it very hard. I'm sorry, I'm just going through some thoughts. And I got in some bad habits, and I just drifted right away from the church. And I even worked with a fellow who, God bless him, he would Bible bash me. Yeah. And I'll tell him in no uncertain terms where to go. And I totally just turned against it. Yeah. Not turned against it. One thing I can say, I never blasphemed. Even when I heard blaspheming, it went in one ear and messed with me before it come out. Yeah. So I can honestly say that I never blasphemed. But with all the other things I did, I know God's forgiven me because I've asked for forgiveness. But life got that way after a period of time where I've described it before. I just got down so low, and you imagine you close your finger like that and you hold it up to a light, and that little speck of light is all I could see.
Yeah.
I was so far down, but I still had that little speck of light that I had something to focus on. I knew I had to make my way to that light.
Yeah.
So I got back to church, and the closer I got to God, that little hole became bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So I knew I was on the right way because the light was getting clearer and clearer. But the thing was, it'd be like you put a hole in this floor, and I was down there,
Yeah.
and seeing the light. So the light got that big. But it was just to get back on level ground again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I had to, with God's help, this is all with God's help, and a lot of prayers from Mum, because she prayed for me constantly too, just like Donna's Auntie Elsie.
Yep.
So then I crawled out of this hole, and I'm thinking, wow, I can breathe, and then from there it just expanded, I got to a real relationship with God, seeing the awesome power and what God can do in someone's life. And I encourage anyone, if they're feeling low, that they only got that little speck of light, focus on it.
Yep.
Get closer to God, and that light will get bigger, and then you'll crawl out of the hole, and the life just starts all over again with God.
Yeah, that's good, Kev. That's really good. Can I ask you a follow-up question with that? So you were sort of saying like a real relationship with God, like you emphasized that, like I began a real relationship with God. Would you say then, like leading up to that point, do you felt like you needed that pit, that low moment to kind of experience God in a real way?
Yeah, I believe I did need that, because you go on smooth sailing and that, you don't know anything else, but when you hit a storm and you know that God's there, you can trust in God to get you through that storm. I'm glad it wasn't plain sailing.
Yep.
The stuff that I went through, I can encourage other young people that it's a dead-end road. There's nothing at the end. Like the enemy will, like me, put down all those sparkling lights and do this. This is how you have fun and all that. But with that comes consequences, and it's. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
But it's just a dead-end road.
Yeah.
There's nothing that is good will come out of it.
Yeah.
But getting back and following God and to live like Jesus, I fall short so many times, but I still get up and keep trying.
Yeah.
And I believe, for me, that's what God wants me to do. Get up, just keep going, Kev, just keep going,
Yeah.
And I think he does for all of us.
Absolutely, that's good. Donna, we kind of just focused on Kev for ages, which was awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It was a good story. But same question, like was your life always in the church, or was there a season where you were far from God, or same question?
Yep. So no, I wasn't always in the church, and yes, there was a season in my teens. I stopped going to church. My parents divorced. That changed a lot of things. I also went down a really messy, dark road. It was a time of real lostness for me, searching. And there was some real misery in there too, thinking back. It wasn't till I was 25 that I started to come back to church regularly. Over that messy, dark period, I did go to church occasionally, and it was more really out of obligation to that great aunt that had that influence in my life. She'd always tell me, "Oh, love, you should go to church. You must go to church." And so I could hear her beautiful voice, and I'd go occasionally. Or if I got myself in some kind of mess, and I thought maybe I could go and make a deal with God.
Yep.
Get me out of this. So it wasn't until I was 25 that I went to a Baptist church, and that is when church became something different to me, and I felt like I was a part of it, because I didn't feel like I was a part of it previously.
Yeah.
And then probably when I was around 30, it would be, when I came to this church, that not only did I feel a part of it, but then it became like family.
Yeah.
And his family.
That's awesome. So, just for people at home who might not, like, I've heard all these stories before, and I still love them. Like, I could sit here for ages and listen to them. But how did you guys actually meet? Because obviously you guys are married. People surely know that. But how did you guys meet?
I was in a street person, and Donna just took pity on me. No, I played in a band with Donna's brother.
Yep.
And we just, I met Donna, and we just always hit it off. I could sit down and just have a good conversation with her, and we just enjoyed each other's company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Took her to a hot rod show. That was pretty romantic. Yeah.
That was the one.
See, like, Kevin and Donna is just like tea and biscuits. Like, you just say Kevin and Donna, and it's like it's meant to be. Anyway, I love you guys.
We were both with different partners at the time too, which was interesting. We were friends for a long time.
Yep.
And different connections altogether.
Yeah. Well, you guys have always been such a good example to me and Ames as well, of just how to treat each other and talk to each other and, be kind to each other. So it's working. Yeah, it is working. I mean, she's not here for no other reason, but we're fine. I know you're a counsellor, but we might book in time.
I was just going to say, you can come and see me later.
No, we're fine. Amy, we're fine. No, Becky's a little unwell today, but we're fine. Okay, so what you guys have clearly established already is that, living a life of faith, and that comes with bumps in the road. Let's talk like a little more kind of recently. You guys have really experienced a lot of loss over the past few years. I wonder whether you guys could just share a little bit about that and just like the toll it's kind of taken on you emotionally and spiritually. I don't know, I want to leave it a bit more open for you guys to share a bit more, but can we talk a bit about some of the losses you guys have experienced and just the toll it's taken?
In the early, around 2011 to 2014, we lost several members of Kev's family in a short space of time, and he might want to talk more about that. But that impacted both of us, obviously. That was a hard season. And just in the past 5 or 6 years, I personally went through great loss with loss of mobility. Halfway through my degree, I had some major back issues.
Yeah.
And with that came loss of mobility. I could hardly lift the kettle off the shelf when things were at their worst. And then along with that came loss of dreams and plans and hopes. And so that kept sort of continuing on for a while. And then on top of that, then in 2016, my dad passed away suddenly. And so that was a massive loss again. Probably the worst loss, I think, for me that I've ever had. And along with that, the circumstances around Dad's death and the recent events in his life brought even more loss. Yeah. And so there was loss upon loss upon loss.
Yeah.
And when you have that, every significant loss in a person's life requires an adequate grief process.
Yeah.
To work through feelings and make sense of. And when you have loss upon loss upon loss, you have a very complicated and messy grief process. And so I'd say we've both experienced that because them losses are overlapping. So that was a very, very difficult period, and we really both have lent on God so heavily through that time, and we still are.
Yeah. Yeah, so Kev, just if you can, is there any way that you can kind of explain just the emotional and physical and spiritual, all three, you know, impact of those losses, because I mean, you really did have a streamline of losses during that period. How did that affect you?
It was really hard because, I lost my nan in 2006, and you know, the good thing was we got to take Grandad out on our trips and that.
Yep.
So to spend a lot of time with Grandad, but then we lost Grandad, and that really smacked me hard.
Yep.
Yeah, because he was such an influence, you know, just a man of great stature.
Yep.
And so that was really hard. And then not long after, 6 months after that, my stepfather died.
Yeah.
And then not long after that, my dad died. So, and this was all, you know, 6 monthly,
Yeah.
you know, periods. So the grief that I had for Grandad, I didn't get to grieve. You know, I only had a short time to grieve because I felt then Mum lost her dad, so I had to support Mum.
Yep.
You know, and Mum and myself were really close. So Kev's grieving had to be put on hold.
Yep.
And that was okay. You know, I wanted to look after Mum. We both did.
Yep.
Then Roy passed away, and then that was more grief on Mum. So we just wanted to really be there. And then I remember one thing with me dad, my sister had got diagnosed with 2 brain tumours.
Yep.
And as soon as my dad up at Queensland found out, he come down. I never got to see Dad that much. But in 2 weeks, I got to know Dad. You know, we had a lot of fun. Sister's operation got postponed. Anyway, I got to know Dad really well. And I remember the last thing I said to me Dad as he went back to Queensland, in the driveway, I said, "Dad, I love you." And that was the last thing that I ever said to Dad.
Yeah.
And Dad had a heart problem, and we're going up there to see him, and we got as far as Grafton, and I got a call that he'd passed away.
Yeah.
So then there was that grief. So all this grief, like Grandad, Roy, Dad, and then in 2014, give me a slap, will you, Andy?
No slapping. We're all good.
Yeah, 2014, Mum passed away. Sorry, I'll be back in a minute.
You're all good.
So it was just more grief.
Yep.
So all that grief that I couldn't grieve,
Yeah.
it just mounted up and up, and I still have trouble now. You just take over for a minute.
Margaret was an incredible woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she had, they are so alike.
Yep.
In so many ways. And they thought the same, they laughed at the same.
Yep.
It was like mother and son were like twins. And she had the strongest influence on Kev too, because his dad, they divorced when he was quite young.
Yeah.
So she had an incredible influence on him and on me too. I couldn't have asked for a better mother-in-law.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how, with all these losses and everything that's going on, and both of you experienced loss, and I think the general vibe of like even this COVID season, whether it's a big loss or a little loss, I think everyone's feeling the same, that maybe even a year has been stolen from them. Because that's what loss is that we've lost something. Something's been taken from us, is how we feel. And so how did your faith in God help get you through that process? You used the right term, that leaning in on God, because even though you're at a loss, you were leaning in on God. How did that help you guys get through that process? How is it still helping you get through that process? Can you guys shed a little bit of light on what was important during that time to focus on?
I think we've, having so much loss in such a short time, I still rely on God, and I ask Him for help because I still haven't had that proper grieving process. And I know that because of what just happened.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to be strong, I'm not going to get upset, but it's a part of my grieving process that's still happening.
Absolutely.
And look, I'm not ashamed of that or anything. It's just the way I deal with it. People say, but that was years ago. Get over it. Well, as Donna has taught me, we all handle grief differently.
Yeah.
There's no time limit on grief. And I tell so many clients too, that they've lost their husbands. I say, how long ago? 20 years ago. Yeah. And they say, but I still cry. I said, there's no time slot for grief.
That's right.
And I got to remember that too, but just then, just shedding a tear, that I know that was a help in my grief.
Yeah.
But right through this, I know God was in it. We get on the other side of things and look back, and we can see how God has worked in that.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing, And at the time, I said, why? I remember we had a group of fellows over there from Warrior Heart, and we laid hands on Mum and prayed for her, and she still died.
Yeah.
But you know what? She felt so at peace and relaxed when all them boys were in the house and praying over her.
Yeah.
There was a peace over her, and she had a peace when she did pass. It was just amazing. But like I said, I was saying how God worked. It's very hard to look forward because we've so much going on. It's just so clouded and everything. But when you're on the other side of it, like I said, when you look back, you see how God's worked in it, and it's just He knows what He's doing, eh? Yeah. Even though there's a lot of sadness, and we all experience grief at one time or another. Yeah. But we know that, hey, God's in control. You're going to be okay.
That's been the one line that I like, because sorry, I just said like about 18 times. I like it too. But we've spent, all the years you guys have been in church, we've spent it, and I really got to know you guys at a really critical age for me, where I even shared this with you on, I think it was on Father's Day, I think I sent you the message saying, Kev was such a critical person in my life at a crossroads in my life in terms of not fitting in at school, listening to different music. Like the music thing was such a big thing. We're not going to have time, but we haven't even touched on you guys being like amazing musicians and loving music, but that ability of being able to go to you and not feel ashamed that I liked all the old 80s rock or I liked all Queen and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, which you guys right now, like, how could anyone not like that stuff? And it's all
You've seen the light, Andy.
It's all popular now because there's a new movie out and everyone likes it. But, there was a time there where it was not the cool thing, and I just remember that. But that's the one sentence I remember you always saying to me is, he knows what he's doing. Like, he seems to know what he's doing. And I'm like, yeah, he does. And I just always remind myself that in those times of unknowns, I guess God knows what he's doing. It's good. Donna, what I want to do though is I just want to shift if that's okay. I thought Kev really capped that off beautifully. Let's just talk about the counselling and the speaking thing. When did that start to, because I mean, that's not something you've done your whole life. When did that start to shift, and when did you start getting a bit of a passion for that?
Well, I started my degree in 2013, but prior to that, I used to hear this radio station, 103.2, and they would be advertising becoming a counsellor.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been about 2 years. Every time I heard that commercial, I thought, gee, it'd be good to do that.
Yeah.
It'd be good to help people at that level, and I think I'd like to maybe do something like that.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to do it, then I want to do it with God's guidance.
Yep.
And Him as my compass. That's why I chose a Christian institute to study through.
Yep.
And I want to do it well.
Yeah.
I want to do it right, you know, in my capacity and in the capacity that He will enable me to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that, wanting to do it started then. And the very first day of my training, I became passionate right then.
Yeah.
I just knew that it was where I needed to be and where I could be. And the interesting blessings behind that is when I was looking to see the cost of the study, it seemed out of reach, way out of reach for me, for us. And anyway, and then as I looked further into it, aside from that, it seemed I had to do some other kind of study before it.
Yep.
And we just prayed about this. And Kev, the one thing I also needed, besides God's backing, was my husband's. And so I said to Kev, if this happens, will you support me in that? And he said, yes, I will.
Yep.
And really, his name should be on that degree as well, because he earned half that with me in support. And God just flung the doors open, both of them. The financial thing wasn't an issue. I could get the fee help. And then when I rang the institute, they said, no, you've got lots of life experience at your age, which was 43 back then. And so it just thrived from there, the passion.
Yeah, that's awesome. How important and how biblical do you think it is that people have the space to be able to talk about things and to deal with their pain on an exterior level?
I think it's really biblical. The first thing that comes to mind is God encourages us to talk and communicate. And first and foremost, He encourages us to talk and communicate with Him. And then He gives us a model of community and family and togetherness.
Yeah.
And that involves talking. And then I think of other verses of Scripture like bear with one another and love each other and so on and so on. So to be able to talk to each other and help each other in that way, I think is very biblical. Yeah.
And how connected do you believe the emotional and the spiritual is together? How connected do you think, I sometimes think that sometimes we try to separate everything too much, even in the church world, where we sort of go, well, you've got to go see a counsellor, or you've got to go... Do you believe it's important for the church to be sort of like the flag bearer for counselling and the flag bearer for mental health and the flag bearer for people coming and receiving help that way? I don't know what I'm asking, but I'm asking a general question that I know you probably agree with.
Yeah, I think the church should be, and I think anybody should be, kind of, because we all need help. We all need help with so many different things in this life of ups and downs and rounds, and a counsellor is a helper for mental health.
Yeah.
And just like anyone in a church or elsewhere would tell you to go to a doctor if you were physically sick, or take your car to a mechanic if it needed something, then why wouldn't we encourage people to go and get help for their mental health?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there seems to be like a level where, I don't know, like exactly what you've said, if there's something wrong with your car, there's no shame in taking your car to the mechanic. That seems logical. If there's something wrong with your body or your health, there seems to be no shame with going to the doctor because that just seems logical. But there does sometimes seem to be a little bit of underlying shaming and embarrassment about going and seeing a counsellor or going and seeing a psychologist or going and seeing a psychiatrist or whatever it is. I mean, I can never remember what I've been to, but I'm not ashamed to say that I've been to a psychiatrist, I believe, and for him to tell me things in the room where he's like, that is weird, and I've never heard of that before, and I'm like, oh, okay, and not feel good. But I'm not ashamed on any level the fact that I've gone to receive help for my mental health. Why do you think there is that level sometimes of, it's not outward shaming, but it seems like we shame ourselves a little bit for receiving help? Do you have any insight on that?
Well, two things come to mind, and I'm thinking about the stigma there used to be about going to the person in the white coat and laying on the couch.
Yeah.
And having this idea that you were crazy or a Fruit Loop and that, you were screwed up and there was something drastically wrong with you.
Yeah.
And there was shame about that and embarrassment about that because, as people, it seems we're really hard pressed to admit that we've got problems.
Yep.
And look, just interestingly, there's parts of our brain that fight that stuff.
Yeah.
And that don't want to go there. And it's about survival.
Yeah.
And I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
It seems we're kind of mechanically geared to resist acceptance that we're not okay at times.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was that giant slogan, wasn't there, for ages, it's okay to not be okay, which was fantastic, for people to be able to embrace and go, hey, it's all right if I need to go and get help and talk to somebody.
Yep.
And what was the rest of that you asked? So with the shame, I think I might have answered it both of the thoughts. Yeah, that there's... We struggle to for some reason, to admit that we've got problems and that we need help, and the more we can get rid of the shame around that, and be able to embrace it, the better. And it's not only issues and problems that people go and seek counselling for. People come about life choices, and you hear another term, life coaching. Well, it's similar.
Yeah.
People come to celebrate the wins as well.
Yeah.
They want to know if, should they move? Should they have another child? Should they get married?
Yeah.
Should they take up golf? I mean, you can talk about anything.
The answer's no. They should not take up golf.
Should not take up golf?
I don't think so.
Well, I couldn't, that's for sure. It'd be traction.
Not if you want to be
me.
stress-free. I mean, that's not...
Yeah.
So just, because one thing I'm hearing as well is that we sort of say, I like what you've just said, that it's not just about going when you've got problems or issues. But I also think that we've got to normalise as well for everyone that everyone experiences issues. I think the influx of social media and the idea of people putting up their best photo, I mean, I'll take 16 photos and pick the best photo, right? We've got to try and eradicate this idea that it's unnormal to have problems. I liked what Kev said earlier, that life's not smooth sailing. We are meant to have ups and downs. We're meant to have lows and highs. We're meant to have good times, bad times. It's called life. But getting that extra assistance in life of having a counsellor or a life coach or someone that helps you through that is really, really essential and really, really important. And I think New Heart Church should be a place, if it's not already happening at other churches, I think New Heart should be the place that really goes forward with saying, hey, we want to provide a place that allows people to come and get help, like with counselling or with, whatever. I mean, we're very far off being able to launch anything, but I think that that's going to have to be something that's a cornerstone of our churches, and hopefully a cornerstone of many churches, that they provide help for mental health, that they provide help for loss after loss after loss, that they provide a space for people to come and speak and to talk and to celebrate as well. All those things. Let me ask one or two. I've got two final questions. What would you guys like to be remembered for? I have a feel like this is going to be a joint couple thing because you guys are adorable and you do everything in couples. But, what would you like to be remembered for if you could just have one sentence or one thing, one word?
A man of few words, plenty of action, and an encourager.
Good. That's nice. Good.
I have to say that your Begin Again series helped me with this, and that was great.
Oh, good.
Top series. So this was an easy one.
Oh, good.
I would like to be remembered as somebody who listened and cared, and somebody who points the way to Jesus.
Lovely. That's awesome. And what's something that we could be praying for you guys over the next few months? People watching at home, people in the room. What's something that us as a community can just be praying for the Bonifaces for?
We pray this every morning for salvation for our family and friends, because I keep saying this thing at Camden Church: seek the Lord while he may be found. And today is the day for salvation. And that's what we pray for, is that they'll get to know Jesus, have a relationship with Jesus before it's too late. I think even salvation's got a use-by date on it, and one day it will be out of reach.
Yep.
So that's... Yeah, and just our dear friends too that don't have a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
That's probably our main one. Well, for me it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I second that. On a different level, just for our health, and we'd like to do a little bit of travelling. I know Kev would like to, and so we'd like to be able to do that in the future, and still minister in the way that we do.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm going to pray for you guys right now, and we're actually going to end the service right here, right now. And but can we just show our gratitude to Kevin and Donna and thank them for sharing so honestly and beautifully. The one thing I just want to stress as well, and I don't want to tie it back to me, but the importance of your I just want to keep talking. We do this all the time as well. Like, what was meant to be half an hour ends up being 3 hours. That whole idea of your great aunt staying up to 2 o'clock praying, but not just that, the constant encouraging of you, and I would presume that those late night prayers were for you as well, especially in those times of being away, and the idea of your mum praying for you, and it wasn't just your mum, I'm presuming there was a whole bunch of people. Sometimes what I'm afraid of when I reflect on my life is that you guys never gave up on me at any stage. And there was some dark times, but I think probably the reason why I stayed so centre with a lot of things is because I had you guys. But even like little things, I know like Kev would lend me an album and I'd open up that album and there would be a letter in there from Donna. And the letter would be, Andy, all these musicians are so great, blah, 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 but please remember. And it was like just like all these kind of like Bible verses of, because it would be like AC/DC or Iron Maiden or something like that. And you would be like, it's important to balance this. And I just really want to encourage you guys to say that your impact on another generation is so huge and probably beyond what you see in front of you. But I think it's also an encouragement and a challenge to everyone in our rooms here and everyone watching in rooms at home. The fact that, hey, who is it that you're pouring into? Who is it that you stay up late praying for? Who is it that you are trying to encourage and inspire? And sometimes it doesn't always go to plan. I know there's people that I've done that for who've all walked away. There's others that haven't. But I just wanted to encourage you guys for that, but also challenge people in the same breath. So I want to thank you for that. Can we give them another round of applause and a big... Kev's dying to say something on the microphone, I can see it, but we're going to cut it off. You can talk afterwards. All right, why don't I pray for you guys? I'm going to pray for everyone at home. We're going to close this off. They're going to play music, lights will go on, and you guys can say hello to someone. So let's pray. God, thank you so much for this time. We thank you for this series and for being able to just hear other people's stories. And God, we know that sometimes our stories come with some darker colours, and they come with some colours that we feel might not paint a pretty picture. But Lord, we know with those dark colours along with the brighter colours, you can actually make masterpieces out of our lives. And So God, I thank you for Kevin and Donna, and I thank you for their love of you. I thank you for their faith in you and their trust in you. I thank you for those that went before them, who believed in them and trusted you on the behalf of them. God, I thank you for their story of loss and their story of feeling like there was no hope and that dreams were being dashed, and yet out of that, God, you've enabled them to see how good you are through it all. God, I thank you so much for Donna's passion for counselling and for people experiencing health, especially health mentally and emotionally. And God, I pray that you would bless her in that and that she would find great success in that ministry and in that line of work. And God, I know that Kev's work is not empty either, that God, he pours himself into some of the older people and people that he travels around with, and that, Lord, he is a real encouragement and he is a real... he has a real passion and love for those clients. And so, Lord, I pray that you would bless them, that you would bless them with health, and that, God, that they would feel your presence. And, Lord, that they would be a great witness and a great encouragement to their friends and family around them. And, God, for us as a church, Lord, for us as individuals who make up this community, I pray that we would take the blinders off, that we would stop seeing this faith and this life and this walk with you as just an isolated single walk, but it's about pouring ourselves into other people. It's about pulling other people up to know you better, and it's about doing life with people, and it's about sharing our lives with people. And so, God, help us to have that passion as well. All this, Lord, we pray in your name. Amen.